Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Team Tuesday this week with Wilson Govindji. Hey Wilson, welcome back.
Hello Vasco, good morning.
Good morning indeed. So today's Tuesday, and every Tuesday we look at teams and how sometimes they become their own worst enemy. But before we jump into the teams, we do want to know, Wilson, what was the book that most inspired you in your career as a Scrum Master?
Ooh, this is a very difficult question. You'd spend here a whole day talking about books, but if I really need to talk about a few, I have two that I want to share with you and with our listeners. So the first one is Extreme Ownership. This was a pleasant surprise.
Who was the author, by the way?
So the author is there are two Navy SEALs, ex-Navy SEALs, Jocko and Leif Babin. I don't know the surname of the first one.
What was the book about? Because we talk a lot about ownership also here on the podcast, and because we're an agile community, we know about extreme programming. So what is extreme ownership?
I thought that this being a book written by military people, it would be much about command and control attitude, but no, it ended up being a very nice surprise, and it's probably one of the best leadership books I have read. And one of the things I have learned by reading this book is that as a leader, it's extremely important to take full ownership of everything that happens in your circle. And this was kind of a bit tough for me to accept in the beginning, but then I kind of slowly started changing my mindset and attitude about this and embracing this principle. So, if someone, for example, does not come to a retrospective, instead of me starting blaming, these people or this person does not like retrospective, does not like me, it was more thinking, okay, where have I failed? What can I do better to make this person wanting to come to the retrospective? So it is on that sense. And another thing that really hit hard about this book is a quote. So if you don't mind, I want to read this to our listeners. So it says like this: when setting expectations, no matter what has been said or written, if substandard performance is accepted and no one is held accountable, if there are no consequences, that poor performance becomes the new standard. So this quote is amazing, and it shaped my mindset that despite how strong a status quo may be, as a Scrum Master, I need to have that courage to hold the mirror and call out something when things are not okay. And, I think that's the only way I can sleep well at night, knowing that I did everything I could. And this again links back to accepting ownership of everything within my circle. So this is my first book, Vask. The other book I want to call out is a book that I've already heard being called out here on the podcast. It's called The People's Scrum by Tobias Mayer. This is actually a set of essays and blog entries that Tobias has written over the years. And the reason I like this book, it's because, and for those who know personally Tobias, he's an expert in teaching and explaining concepts from a human-centric perspective. And when I feel overwhelmed by the amount of frameworks and techniques that we read about and they're coming every day around Scrum and Agile, I just come back to this book and I kind of feel an inner peace because it grounds Scrum to the original concept of the values of Scrum and Agile, really. So yeah, those are my two books.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that you mentioned the book Extreme Ownership, also because it brings to the forefront the importance of accepting our role as leaders, because there are many people out there who struggle with this perspective of the Scrum Master role, right? Like, you're not a manager of anyone. You're being managed, and in other words, you're reporting to someone. But when we are working with the teams, we are there to help them hold themselves accountable. You talked about the performance level falling to the least acceptable, or to the, what is it, the easiest acceptable level of performance, right? And we need to help the teams to understand that our role there is to hold them accountable to themselves, not only to stakeholders. And that extreme ownership that you were talking about, and that perhaps not so easy thought, but very important thought, that everything is our responsibility, whether it's positive or negative, everything is our responsibility. I think that's a really challenging but potentially groundbreaking mindset to have as a Scrum Master. So thank you for sharing that. All right, now we turn our attention to the teams and how sometimes, despite all the things we do, they kind of sabotage themselves, right? And it's important to understand those patterns, because we can't react to them if we don't understand them. So share one of those with us, Wilson.
Okay, so this story is about a team that was new to Scrum. So it was the very first time that coders and testers, designers were working together side by side every single day. So from the outset, things were kind of looking okay. However, over the time, something started happening. Dysfunction started emerging. The team was not able to deliver on their commitments. The quality decreased and the morale was quite low. People didn't look happy. They would speak as less as possible during our Scrum events. And I kind of started linking to what was happening. So I felt that there was no trust between coders and testers. So, for example, the testers would ask or challenge some behavior that they would find in the software, and the coders would disregard it. So, and the only way that the testers were able to be heard was to go through the technical lead. So this was something that the coders wouldn't like, and this would deteriorate again that relationship even more. So as a Scrum Master, I tried to solve this situation. I had to have one-to-ones with all team members, understand how they were feeling, what they were feeling, and then we brought this to several retrospectives. So this was not something that was solved over one retrospective. It took some time. Easily, and by the time that people were more comfortable speaking and discussing this in a group manner. I also coached the tech lead to do a little bit of coaching himself. So when he found himself on the situation that he had to mediate between the coder and the tester with them, to kind of make them understand that we are a team, we should be working together. Yeah. So yeah, it took several weeks, but at some time people become comfortable. They understood that we are on this together. Yeah. And we were able to save this from total chaos and became one of the best teams actually in the company. So if I need to have a takeaway from this story, and at the time being a new Scrum Master, I feel that it's not enough to leaders to gather people, create a Scrum team, and expect everything to go well. Okay, I'm not talking about in technical ways, but in terms of people, how they will work together, because there will be some time that will take for people to gel together, to transform actually from a group of people and become actually a team and own a goal. And it was at that time, Vash, that I became familiar with the Tucker model of team development. So, the stages of the forming, norming, storming, and performing stages. So I always use that model to kind of understand and assess where a team is and how do we need to work with that team.
And one of the things to highlight here is that Tucker model is not, it's not 100% reliable depiction of reality, but it's a model that we can use to guide our own reflection. One of the things you talked about, it's not enough to gather people in the same room for them to become a team, right? we know that as Scrum Masters. Okay, but now what do we do next, right? And it's very important for us to have a clear picture of what are the steps that the teams go through, and the Tucker model is one of those. There's other models as well, of course, and it's great for us to refer, as we do here every Tuesday, to some books on also team dynamics, because that's one of the aspects where we need to focus on the most, right? So one last question, Wilson. If you're like looking back now at that story, what do you think was the key moment that started turning the story of that team around from being a collection of uncooperative individuals to being later on a high-performing team? What was that one key moment you think that really triggered that transformation?
Well, I think people started realizing that it wasn't a healthy situation to be working like this on a daily basis. And as we started talking openly about it without fearing anyone saying something, and for example using the retrospectives and me going on one-to-ones and actually listening to what they were talking, I think that became the moment that people said, okay, look, we are in this situation. It's not good. It's not good for the people we serve, which is our customer, for the business, and we don't have pleasure by working like this. So yes, I think it was slowly by doing these retrospectives and people becoming comfortable that they started shifting their way of thinking as well. And we started finding ways to collaborate, and the trust emerged. So then slowly the technical lead was not used as a proxy to have that communication. And I started seeing that people, coders and testers, started laughing and having healthy conversations, not only about work, but about personal things as well. And that's when I said, okay, things are going well now.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are great signs when people start talking more and laughing together. It's a great sign of transformation. That was a great story. Thank you for sharing that, Wilson.
Thank you.
Tuesday is Team Day here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. But tomorrow we talk about something that goes beyond the work we do with the teams. We will talk about how to lead change and what our guests have learned from leading and participating in change programs during their career. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.